Zora village was a land of beauty, where the drums never stopped and joy filled the air. The maidens of Zora were admired across the land, each dressed in bright ankara, graceful and proud. But above all things, Zora was known for Prince Roma, the pride of the kingdom. Every maiden dreamed of him, but though they adored him, Roma's heart remained untouched. One evening, the maidens gathered at the palace, determined to win his heart. The drums thundered, the flute sang, and the maidens began to dance. Yet Prince Roma only clapped politely, his face kind, but his heart unmoved. When the drums stopped, the maidens whispered among themselves, bitter and jealous. Prince Roma rose quietly and left the palace, restless and searching for peace. That evening, the sky glowed orange as he strode along the quiet path. And then, by the stream, he saw her, Nana. Her scarf slipped back, strands of hair falling across her face, yet she looked graceful in her labor. Prince Roma stood in the shadows, watching her silently. For the first time, his heart stirred. But Nana's life was full of pain. She lived with her auntie and cousin, who made life miserable for her. Each morning, she fetched water, cooked, washed, and swept until her body ached. Her auntie scolded her harshly, while her cousin mocked her torn clothes and suffering. Yet Nana never cursed. Though her eyes often carried tears, her lips still managed a gentle smile. The palace courtyard glowed under the brightness of tall burning torches. The maidens of Zora lined up proudly, each dressed in the finest ankara her family could provide. The air smelled of palm oil lamps, and the drums began to roll slowly. The entire village had gathered to see which maiden would capture the prince's heart. At the center of the gathering sat the prince on a carved wooden throne. His tall frame carried the dignity of royalty. He wore a deep red and gold agbada, richly embroidered with golden threads. Heavy coral beads hung around his neck and wrists, and a beaded crown rested on his head. His leather sandals shone under the torchlight as he leaned on a carved staff. The drums grew louder, and the maidens began to dance. Their colorful wrappers swirled in the air as they twirled and stamped their feet. One maiden in orange ankara with bold white floral prints and an off-shoulder blouse bent low, showing her waist beads as she moved with energy. Another, in blue ankara with large star patterns and a matching head tie, raised her arms gracefully. Yet, the prince did not move. His eyes wandered away from the dancers, drifting toward the flickering torches as if he longed for something beyond the noise and beauty before him. Some maidens became bolder. A tall maiden in a tight purple ankara gown with gold embroidery swayed close to the throne, her hips moving slowly. Another in a bright red ankara wrapper with black dotted designs and a blouse cut low at the chest laughed loudly, tossing her head to draw his eyes. The courtyard rang with their voices, but his heart remained still. Around the courtyard, the palace guards stood firm. They wore brown leather tunics with red sashes tied at their waists, holding tall wooden spears. Their faces were stern, but some exchanged small glances, amused at how hard the maidens tried to win over their prince. When the last drumbeat faded, silence fell. The maidens found themselves with tired hands, sweat shining on their foreheads. Their hearts raced with hope, but the prince only stood slowly, adjusted the folds of his agbada, bowed his head slightly, and turned away. Whispers broke among the maidens. One in a blue ankara wrapper with white star patterns folded her arms in anger. Another in a green and yellow ankara gown with a bold head tie pointed toward the palace with frustration. "Is he blind?" one muttered. "What kind of man refuses such beauty?" But the prince paid no attention to their anger. He stepped out of the palace gates into the cool night. The breeze lifted the edges of his flowing agbada, and the soft sound of crickets guided him down the quiet path as fireflies lit his way. Beyond the palace walls, the night was calm. A soft moon hung above the trees, and the cool wind carried the smell of firewood from distant huts. The prince walked with measured steps, his staff tapping gently on the earth. His mind was far from the noise of the palace and the bright colors of the maidens. He longed for something pure, something his heart could call its own. On the narrow path leading to the stream, a young girl walked slowly with a clay pot balanced on her head. Her clothes were simple, a faded brown wrapper with tiny blue patterns tied around her waist and a washed-out blouse that had lost its color. She wore no jewelry, only the shine of sweat on her face from a long day's walk. Her bare feet were dusty from the road, and her shoulders sagged under the weight of endless chores. She lived with her aunt and cousin, who treated her like a servant. From fetching water to pounding yam, from sweeping compounds to gathering firewood, her life was filled with hardship. Yet her spirit was not broken, her quiet eyes carried a hidden strength. The prince stopped when he saw her. Unlike the maidens in the palace, she did not dance or laugh loudly. She was simple, humble, and unaware of who watched her. The breeze lifted the edge of her wrapper, and in that moment, the prince felt a peace he had not known all night. The girl bent down carefully, setting her clay pot on a rock to rest her arms. She wiped the sweat from her forehead with the back of her hand. The prince stepped closer, his staff striking the earth softly. She looked up, startled, her wide eyes meeting his. For a moment, time seemed to stop. The prince's gaze softened. In her, he saw not wealth or display, but honesty and quiet dignity. The girl quickly lowered her eyes, unsure of how to behave before a royal figure. She clutched the edge of her wrapper nervously, her heart beating fast. He spoke in a calm, deep voice, "Why do you walk alone at such an hour?" The girl hesitated, then whispered, "I went to fetch water." Her voice was soft, almost trembling. The prince studied her. This was no maiden in jeweled head ties or glittering gowns, yet her words touched his heart more than all the dancing in the palace. In the distance, the sound of drums from the palace grew faint. The world around them grew quiet, leaving only the chirping of crickets and the gentle rustle of leaves. The prince smiled faintly, realizing he had found the beauty no palace gathering could offer. Back at the palace courtyard, the maidens sat in small groups, their once bright faces now dull with disappointment. Some folded their arms in anger, others wiped tears from their eyes. Their colorful ankara wrappers, which once danced with pride, now sagged in defeat. One maiden in a purple ankara gown with gold embroidery covered her face with her hands, while another in a green and yellow pattern wrapper stamped her foot angrily. Whispers spread among them. How could he walk away without choosing? By dawn, word had spread through the village. The prince had been seen walking under the moon with a humble girl in a faded wrapper. The villagers gathered in excitement, clapping their hands, some cheering loudly, others singing songs of joy. The maidens who had dressed in their finest cloth looked on with envy as the villagers celebrated. Their anklets jingled with each angry step, but no amount of jewelry could hide their disappointment. And so it was that the maidens who flaunted beauty were left in tears, while the village rejoiced that their prince had chosen with his heart. From that day, Zara remembered the night when true love rose like the moon above pride and glitter.